See you first. So I will go ahead and call the Village Board of Essex Junction meeting for Tuesday, December 14th to order. Thank you all for being here. Do we have any agenda additions or changes tonight?
Yes, we do.
We have a possible, we're going to ask. We got a late request for a recognition. Marguerite, you just sent that out.
Yeah.
Has anybody had a chance to look at it 5 minutes ago?
I have not seen it.
No.
So the executive director of 211 is retiring, and they'd like a proclamation for her.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mendel and.
Mary Ellen Mendel.
Yes, they would like a proclamation.
Okay.
Proclamation of Mary Ellen Mendel Day, which would be December 15th.
She's retiring tomorrow.
It's in the note I just sent, so if we get
Sure.
time as a business item, I can put it on the screen and you can do what you like if that works for you.
Sure. Why don't we put that as the last thing? So let's make that 5E. Nothing like a last minute request. Please no judgment, Marguerite, about the 5-minute email thing.
No, it is. Yep, it was quite last minute.
Yep. Any other agenda additions or changes?
No, not from staff. That was plenty.
All right, if there's none other from board members, I would entertain a motion to amend the agenda.
I move to amend the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you, George. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great, so that passed unanimously. And this brings us to the portion of the meeting for public comment. And this is for public comment, questions, concerns to the board about things that are not on tonight's agenda. If there are things on tonight's agenda that you have a comment, question, or concern about, we will get to the public comment period during that agenda item. So for those of you using Microsoft Teams, please go ahead, start raising your hand if you have any questions, comments, concerns for the board about things that are not on the agenda. While you're doing that, to those of you at 2 Lincoln, is there anybody in the room who has, or anybody in the room who would like to speak to the board?
No, there's one member of the public here, but they do not want to speak.
Okay. Coming back to Microsoft Teams, I am not seeing any hands up, nothing in the chat. So we'll go ahead and move off of public to be heard and on into business item 5A. The upcoming legislative session with updates from our state senators and representatives. So I'll go ahead and welcome our representatives and senators here tonight. We have Representative Lori Houghton, Representative Karen Dolan, Senator Ginny Lyons, and Senator Thomas Chipton. Appreciate you all being here tonight, taking time out of your busy days as you're also preparing for the new session coming up. So appreciate you being here. So to get things started, what may be helpful, if you don't mind, just for those who may not know, could we go around and just better understand which committees you're assigned to? So that may help to frame the conversations. And if we don't mind starting, Representative Houghton, could you go first?
Sure, thank you. Hi, everyone. And everyone, trustees, thanks for having us. I know when I sat in your seat, it was always wonderful to have the representatives and senators come in and talk to us. So thank you. And I serve on the House Healthcare Committee. I am ranking member, and that is the only committee I serve on, because in the House, you only serve on one committee.
Thank you. Representative Dolan?
Yes, hi everybody. Thanks for having us. Karen Dolan, and I sit on the House Corrections and Institutions Committee.
Thank you. Senator Lyons?
Good evening, and thanks so much for having us. It's just unfortunate that we're not there in the meeting room, but maybe in the next several months that'll happen. I am Jenny Lyons, and I do serve as chair of the Health and Welfare Committee in the Senate. I also serve on the Education Committee. And among other appointments, I am on the Justice Oversight Committee and the Child Protection Oversight Committee, as well as the Legislative Committee on Administrative Rules. And the reason I mentioned that one is because we get to have this look at every single government agency and department as rules and guidance documents are written. So it gives us a little bit more of a broad perspective. So that's it. And I look forward to having a conversation.
Thank you, Senator Lyons. And last, certainly not least, Senator Chittenden.
No,
Senator Tom.
I'm least. That's fine. It's all good. So I'm Tom Chittenden. I am a new legislator, one of the 4 new senators this year, and I serve on Senate Education, Senate Transportation, and I also was appointed to the Vermont State Infrastructure Bank Board, and also I serve on the Joint Information Technology Oversight Committee for the legislature. In addition, I am currently finishing my last term on the South Burlington City Council, and I just want to say, as another municipal officially elected official, I want to thank you all for your service. I know how these meetings can go really long, and I promise not to talk any longer than need be tonight, and I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you for being here. And before we kind of really get into things, for the senators, I'd also like to just take the moment to appreciate you all in particular, and Karen, Lori, not to take away from the two of you, just to recognize the fact that this is going to be the last time that the two of you would also then be carrying our interests as a part of being Chittenden County delegates, as the recent passage of I can't remember whether it was a constitutional amendment or a bill, but whatever it was, where our Senate delegation will no longer have more than 3 members per district. So we will lose some of you, and want to appreciate you for your years of service. No matter whether that's just been this is your first term or whether this has been more terms than I'm going to count right now. Really appreciate your years of dedication and service to our county and our community. So thank you very much. But with that, I'd love to start off a little bit with hearing some of your individual priorities coming into this legislative session, and then afterwards, I have some questions, and I'm sure the rest of our board members have some questions to really have this be a back and forth conversation. And no need to call on people if any one of you wants to chime in first with what's hot on your mind coming into this next session.
We're going to let the senators go and have the limelight for a little bit.
No. Go ahead, Senator Chittenden.
All right, Senator Lyons. I will be glad to start off. So just some things that I've been working on. I serve on Senate Transportation, where I have to say, not enough people know about train service in Vermont. The Vermonter is a little secret that people don't know. They can get on every single day now that it's back in service, and get all the way down to Washington, D.C. and all the stops in between. And I'm really excited about additional train service that's going to be coming online this coming spring. But as I've grown up in Chittenden County, I used to live in Essex Junction on West Street. I'd like to see more coordinated train, rail, and air planning. So as I drive on Route 15 and I see the Burlington International Airport over there, I keep reflecting on how crazy, how difficult would it be to at least have some planning on either public transportation busing lines or otherwise some coordination between when the Vermonter arrives, so that in the evenings, so that there is the right type of transportation directly to the airport, so that we can try to unify some of those multimodal modes of transport. So I'm interested in pursuing some of that. I did have a brief conversation with President Brown on that earlier. It's just a notion that I want to explore some more. Similarly, I don't want to be known as the toll guy, but I will say that one thing that I think Vermont should look at as we continue to electrify our vehicles is other ways that have been used since the dawn of civilization, and all of our neighboring states do now that the technology is available, using technology to do use-based assessment on our roadways to replace, to supplement the declining gas tax, which we want to decline. There are ways, I'm not saying tolls on every roadway, but there are ways to track usage the same way that you can track how much your cell phone is monitored or is used by the cell towers, there are ways to track how cars are using our roadways over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's an interest area that I've been working on the edges with Senate Transportation. Similarly with the airport governance, so I'm going to be introducing an amendment on a charter change, which will be involving a few different things, and I've spoken with Senator Lyons about that. Related to education, I don't know how much time you want me to use, but I am interested in looking at the kindergarten entrance age. And Vermont is one of the 11 states out of 50 that allows local education agencies to choose a date between a 4-month period, August 30th to December 31st. I'm getting the ones wrong there. But that actually does put additional pressure on our childcare system. So with also inconsistencies across municipal boundaries. So I understand there's been some work on this in the past, but I think it's worth revisiting again in the light of the childcare pressures that we're seeing today. If this is something small that we can do to also better utilize our school resources with the declining school age population, I think it's worth our time and attention. I have been investigating concealed carry permits. So I just want you to know, a lot of the time I will investigate issues only to conclude that I don't necessarily want to do something with it. But I promise the voters I'm working hard on things. It's just sometimes the efforts don't necessarily materialize into something I want to move forward in the legislature. Really quickly, I'm really proud to be a co-sponsor of a birth certificate adjustment to allow for gender differences to be recorded by the state registry. I'm expecting the pupil waiting report to spend a lot of time or to use a lot of our time this coming session. That was just released this past Friday. I've read the first 20 pages of it, and I have a general idea of it. I can answer some questions, but some of those I might have to defer to a later time. Other than that, I'm always interested in Act 250 reforms to try to foster infill and downtown development to make it easier for us to invest in our downtown areas to achieve the smart growth we all want. President Brown, I don't know if you'd want me to talk more, but those are the things on my little list.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your list with us. And I appreciate the time you and I had the other day to talk further about your transportation efforts, and appreciate having the village kept in mind as those continue to go forward, given not only the train station and the high use of that as the most heavily trafficked passenger train station in the state, but then also our linkage to the bus station that's right there and potential linkages to the airport. So greatly appreciate that. Senator Lyons, would you like to go next?
Well, I can't go through the entire list because it's a pretty comprehensive list, but I will say that the weighting study in education is very important to me and to others, and as it will be to the Essex School District. And having spent some time last night listening to a full report of that weighting study, and I do have some concerns about some of the recommendations that are there. Really, I think we all need to understand when you teach, and I know you're not the school board, but there will be some overflow, I'm sure. But when you teach kids English language, and the kids are coming from a diversity of countries with diversity of cultural backgrounds, the cost is more than just teaching English language. It goes to teaching children what it means to be in a Vermont school and to be in a different culture. So I'm looking at the actual cost associated with that and hoping that within the weighting study report, we can accomplish the goals that we need to educationally. In education, there's also an area of great concern that we looked at this summer in our Child Protection Oversight Committee. And that is, you may or may not remember the Kern-Hatton outburst of media exposure, where Kern-Hatton children were alleged to have been abused for many, many years. And what we have found now is that there are independent residential schools in our state that have no residential oversight. In other words, when kids stay overnight, there's no DCF authority and there's no agency of education authority. That's a concern for us, so we'll be taking that up in our committee. Beyond that, in education, of course, there will be other issues, but I do think that that relate to childcare and early childhood education. And so moving to childcare, last year we passed a very comprehensive bill that will help to fund and help to put a system in place for childcare. And I know it's just an ongoing issue for businesses. It's an ongoing issue for schools. It's for teachers and for folks who have kids generally. So we'll be looking at childcare and trying to plug the gaps on the system. That we know that part of that will be a conversation around federal dollars and Build Back Better should we see that money. We'll also be looking at other infrastructure funds available to us, whether it's for capital improvements in our mental health system or other areas, and trying to utilize federal dollars as effectively as we can. There is an area of that I think is important both to me and to Representative Houghton. We serve on a task force together. I actually co-chair the task force on affordable, accessible health care. That's a concern for everyone. The cost of health care continues to escalate. That includes prescription drug costs. It includes long-term care costs and our, of course, healthcare premiums. So the goal, we have our meeting tomorrow with that task force, and one of our goals is to ensure that when we save money, the money is saved in people's pockets. So we can talk about lowering the cost of health care at a broad state level, but that doesn't mean that we individually are paying less for our health care, our premiums. And then finally, there's a lot more, but another area of interest that maybe Lori will be talking about is the telehealth. One of the things that we did in our committee last year was to extend some of the emergency rules for telehealth, telemedicine. And so you recently saw in the paper or in the media that you can get tested and the test costs will be covered by private insurers and others. So that is a result of the emergency rules that we allowed to keep in place until March 2022. So now we're going to be going back and looking at what are the rules that are there in place that we should keep permanently. And so we've done that for some of the telemedicine features, but we have to go back, and we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. In other words, just because the pandemic has ended doesn't mean that we can't continue with some of the benefits that we've seen in the healthcare world. So those are some of the things. There are also some issues regarding some other healthcare areas, and maybe we'll get into those a little bit later. But one of the things that I'm particularly interested in is ensuring that your charter is seen quickly and effectively in the House, and that it can go through. I just know that you guys have been working on this since 1999, and I know that that's a long time. I know the stresses and the strains that you've been through, and I just want to congratulate you on the work that you're doing, and it's significant, and I think people need to appreciate what you've done. So I look forward to voting for your charter as quickly as we can in the session. That's it for now. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, but we'll talk later.
Thank you, Senator Lyons. And
Yeah.
representatives, if you don't mind, since Senator Lyons opened that door, I'd like to just walk through that for a moment.
Okay.
So with that little separation vote we had just a few months ago, where 88% of the community overwhelmingly said, yes, we want to separate from the town of Essex. If you don't mind, do any of you, and this does include Representative Houghton, Representative Dolan, do any of you have any questions and or concerns that we could help to answer and or address in advance of us going to the legislature? And what I mean by that is, selfishly, as I'm preparing for our legislative testimony, things that I can put on there now.
So I would say, from my perspective, from what I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you've really negotiated agreement with Essex Town. So there shouldn't be any pushback coming from the town. It seems that the voters have spoken, and you've negotiated department, from what I understand. The fire department's taken care of. You're down to the nitty gritty, and I can't make changes in the charter. So I think I don't have questions at this point, but and I don't think you are going to. Let's say I'm going to knock on wood and say, and I just hope that you don't run into a brick wall at any point.
Thank you, Senator Lyons. And yes, you are correct that even as an update from last night's joint meeting we had with the Town of Essex Select Board, we have agreed to the language of, I believe, 7 or 8 different agreements at this point in time, ranging from the police department to how delinquent taxes will be taken care of. And the ones that we currently have remaining are who has access to which recreation programs and how we do senior services. So things that I'm assuming really are not going to be of concern for you or the House. Senator Chittenden. Senator Tom.
Just
Working on it.
Just Tom. So I've been following the issue, and I did attend an open house session in front of the library. I remember speaking with you, Trustee Tebow, so thank you for that. So I feel pretty comfortable fully supporting this, especially with that outstanding vote result. I guess what I would welcome of you all is when you hear of objections, when you hear the voices and the concerns that will be raised, just educate me. Let me know how much work has been done to address those and what the mitigated solutions are. So as you develop any one-pagers or when your testimony is coming up, as a Chittenden County Senator representing Essex Junction and Town, I'd love to just be in the loop. So please send me any emails you think would educate me on this.
Representatives.
I'll go before Karen. So, obviously Karen and I have been intimately involved, and the leadership on both sides has been amazing. So we both thank you for that. I think you'll both bring forward the pertinent pieces of information we need to know. I think one thing that's really important is that this just means we're working with our, neighbor municipality, just like we would work with another neighboring municipality at this point. But that our destiny is in our control completely, which I think is really important, and the people have spoken. I can also just give a quick update, if you don't mind, Andrew. So Karen and I heard from Ledge Council today. As everyone should know, we had put in a bill draft request soon after the last vote, and that draft has been written. It is being edited at this point, so we should have a copy in the next couple of days that we can share with you. He made some quick comments that he doesn't see any issues with what he has reviewed so far. There were a couple technical changes that needed to be made, changing governing body to city council. Karen and I both said that was fine. And then just honestly renaming some sections that will match what will eventually be the old charter. So that's good. There's no questions coming back, at least from Ledge Council. So once we get that draft, we'll forward it to you, so everyone knows that this will start in House GovOps. And as much as everyone wants this to happen very quickly, there is also there's also the issue of redistricting. And that what we want to make sure is, if we're separating as municipalities, we look at the redistricting in that light as well. We know that in the village and in the town, but especially in the village, we are over the number of people that we can represent. So we will have to divide in some small way. And so they just want to look at that as well when they're looking at the charter. So if I can just take, and I will be really quick, in regards to priorities, as ranking member on the House Healthcare Committee, I'm part of the leadership team, and we met today, and we have a 3-page list of priorities, the timelines, and we look at some of the issues around telehealth, including licensing, audio, telehealth, and, you know, just making sure that people have the access they need in or out of a pandemic, and hopefully we'll be out of it soon. Also, we had a meeting last week. We had a special meeting in the House Healthcare Committee solely dedicated to mental health and what's happening in our community and in our emergency departments. And quite honestly, if anyone wants to watch the testimony, I highly recommend it. It is impactful, and it really is quite gut-wrenching when you have a leader in an emergency room at UVMMC visibly be shaken during his testimony to us. It's not a good situation, and we understand that. I know Senator Lyons understands that, and I anticipate that our committees will be working closely over this session to see what we can do to make sure people are getting the right at the right place. So that will be one of our priorities. And there's many more, but I wanted to just put that out there.
I'll just concur with Lori and Representative Houghton, and I do have a bill in on that, and I know that I'm pretty sure that most or all of our Chittenden County municipalities are deeply involved in trying to solve the problem of mental health response.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Karen.
Yeah, well, I think a lot has been shared, so I won't repeat everything. I think folks have covered a lot of the priorities that we're seeing. I feel like it's important to echo what Representative Houghton shared with the mental health piece, that we had a community conversation this past Saturday where we had great attendance. This is where the Essex and Westford reps come together, and we had a virtual community conversation, and mental health was definitely a big topic on that, along with some others. But I think we're hearing that folks are struggling in lots of different areas, whether it's mental health, it's housing, it's childcare, it's workforce. There's a lot of demands on folks, and so I think we're just going to have to balance all of that. There's going to be a lot of folks that are looking for help, for assistance, and we have a lot of work to do ahead of us this session. I'm looking forward to this session. It's going to be my first one in person, and obviously there's going to be challenges with that we're still in a pandemic. And I spent the day there for a legislative briefing last week, and it could feel it's different energy when you're there. And so as a new legislator, I'm looking forward to that opportunity to connect with colleagues and see that work. In my committee in corrections and institutions, we deal a lot with infrastructure. And so we're going to have the benefit of, there's a lot of money that's coming in for infrastructure right now. So that's going to be work of seeing how do we prioritize projects and relook at our capital bill to see where we want to have spending. On the corrections side of it, one thing I'm looking forward to is at the end of last session, we kind of put out to Department of Corrections and Building BGS, Building and General Services, of kind of what are their design plans for the women's correctional facility or reentry facility. So looking forward to seeing what that is going to be and how they're moving forward on that. Because if folks have been following that, that is long overdue. And I actually had an opportunity this summer to go to the main reentry and correctional facility and see, which is right now the current model that we're thinking of looking at things for. So that would be great to see that. On a similar note to that, I am introducing a piece of legislation I think will help us with our criminal justice reform efforts in this work, which is supporting victim services, or creating a victim services advisory council for the state to help coordinate victim services. We found last year we had some legislation that had to kind of go backwards a bit in our efforts in criminal justice reform because it didn't get the full input of victim voice, and there really seemed to be a gap in getting that. And so this legislation would ensure that there's better coordination and support for that. So I'm somebody who's really about criminal justice reform. And I think the only way we can really make that happen and be effective is if we include solid victim voice along with it. So those are some things, as everybody else said, there's a lot going on.
That's for sure. Thank you, Karen.
Shaped, but with specific regard to Act 250, I was paying close attention to the climate action plan from the Vermont Climate Council, from the GWSA result, and some key passages in there really talk about how we need to look at land use and zoning from a statewide level, ways to steer from a region. We are lacking in countywide. Andrew, but I'm the new guy. I'm going to keep saying that for another 3 months, and I don't know if this has any legs.
The issue around an Act 250 statewide land use plan was one of the things that was dropped off Act 250 when it was first introduced. And now the discussion is coming back. And as you well know, there are still some towns that don't have planning and zoning. And recently to this, and it sounds like there's also first-time home buyers, 1 or 2 bedroom apartments and homes, so that we can have those starter homes up for folks. So I think definitely the legislature is going to be looking at it and having lots of conversation.
And I'll just add, the Essex delegation really thanks Karen. She did the most of the work advocating for as they, continue with their business. So, keep us abreast of what they do, please.
One of the things that probably hasn't been brought up recently is the funding for the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, where much of our bonding comes for affordable housing. So we had a $25 million bond put forward last session. I think it was last session, and that's still being utilized, and it was to target some pretty unique. There were some areas of that bond that were being utilized to target housing for folks with mental health issues and to work with some of our designated agencies, and then also to identify some of the areas that Representative Houghton was talking about, and that is trying to get workforce housing in place.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And anything we can do to help advocate for fully funding the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, always happy to be a part of that conversation.
Terrific.
So other trustees, I've asked a lot of questions. I've spoken enough. George, why don't you go? And you're muted though.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to kidnap and sidetrack the conversation and take us into a slightly controversial area and ask Tom a question. Back a few years ago, South Burlington catalyzed the idea of trying to have a regional airport authority. And it was one of the regrets at my time back then. We found ourselves here in Essex Junction up to our necks in controversy, as we always do. But I thought it was a great idea. I think as Chittenden County expands, you think of our 3 communities, we're impacted more by the Burlington Regional Airport than the city of Burlington is. And I'm just wondering if this is something that you're going to be revisiting, or is that either at the state level or at the South Burlington level?
George, you're hitting right in my ballpark. I love talking about the airport.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to give you form.
That was a soft pitch.
So I have 3 things that we're really looking at. One, H454 is the charter change. I fully support giving the city of Winooski a seat. But if you look at that bill, there's currently 5 members of the airport commission, 1 South Burlington, 4 Burlington. This bill adds a Winooski seat and then another Burlington seat. That's where I raised my hand and I said, I'm sorry, but that's just not the right thing to do. From my 8 years on South Burlington City Council, I have lost the most sleep over the Burlington International Airport and the lack of voice of the communities that are affected by the use of our collective airspace. I could talk all night on this. So what I'm asking for is to offer the town of Williston. I have not received interest. It does not seem that Williston necessarily wants a seat, but that's the current leadership. They haven't said they don't want it, but my point is this. I think we'll make better decisions if we have the communities that are affected by the use of our airspace around the table, reviewing, evaluating, directing the aviation direction of that asset. It's a publicly funded asset. The city of Burlington does not, the taxpayers do not pay into that asset, and they haven't since 1948. It's entirely funded from the use of our airspace. So, George, thank you. And I'll stop talking because I go on for an hour. The other thing I'm pushing.
I'll just add one thing, Tom, and you're right. And it's not just the airspace, but we think of of policing. We think of the ways it impacts, with all the traffic that's going into the airport. I'm not just talking about the F-35, which is the most visible and controversial aspect of it. I'm talking about passengers and all the various infrastructure impacts that it has on all of us here. And again, we deal with the impacts, but we don't get any of the compensation. So I'm with you on that. I hope good luck.
If I may, President Brown, just one other thing. So that's the charter change, and that I think is an easy ask, but honestly, it won't actually do that much because that commission doesn't have much influence. Where I really want to put my shoulder behind, and I hope I have Senator Lyons' support on this. I've already spoken to Diane Lamphere about this, as well as Senator Mazza and many others, and it just makes sense. There's this bill H52 that's been introduced for 4 years in a row, and what it does is exactly what a group of really smart people said that we should do back in 2013, which is to have the state conduct a governance study of the airport. Burlington evaluated their own assessment. They said, everything's great. Well, you know what? It's not just up to Burlington. I love Burlington, but it should be led by the state, and we should look at other governance models that have been recommended going back to the 80s. So I'll leave it at that, George. H52 and H454, two things that I want to get my shoulders behind. And there's one other thing that we're exploring. I don't really expect it to move anywhere, but it would be separating the airport out to a separate charter. I'm open to that. I think it makes sense, but that's where I would need Senator White and Senator Lyons to give me guidance as to how to navigate that path. I would talk the airport all night long. Happy to have coffee with any of you. It's a subject of mine that got me motivated to get engaged in politics.
So I'd like to just chime in and say that Senator Chittenden is doing an amazing amount of work on this in the State House and also in the county. The issue that Williston currently has not come forward, I think, is unfortunate. I think it's just a matter of not wanting to, as you said, cause a rumble, but it should happen. The interesting thing is that when you talk with people in the State House and some of the chairs of committees that might be involved with this, they really don't understand that Burlington owns part of South Burlington and continues to buy property in that city. That is a great concern. So, and as you said, the demand that is caused by the airport in a number of ways has an effect on other towns and cities. But really, what we will be working with our government ops folks and our transportation folks to try to at least get, I would like to see S52 taken up. So you brought up a really good issue.
Thank you, George. And
thanks for the thoughtful answers. Thank you.
And if there's anything that our board could do to help with those measures, please don't hesitate to be in touch.
Yeah, exactly.
Amber or Dan?
Just as long as we're on the topic of transportation, train and aviation or the airport, I'm the representative for our community on Chittenden Regional Planning Commission, and during my tenure there, in the last 10, 11 years, the Cirque Highway was canceled as proposed under the Shumlin administration, and we came up with a Cirque Alternatives Task Force and a bunch of different projects that we felt should be completed to alleviate the traffic problems we're going to continue to have as the community continues to grow, and especially right in Senator Lyons' neighborhood in Williston area at the interchange there. And then I know we have a visit from Congressman Welch coming up to speak to our Crescent Connector project that we're going to be doing here in the village, hopefully soon. I'd like to hear if you have any information on moving forward with the projects that we've got listed, if there's going to be any delays for whatever reason. Just curious. It's been a while, and really would love to see these things completed.
So I serve on Senate Transportation, so I feel like I should jump in again. I have not heard any objections or concerns with the Crescent Connector. I hear quite the opposite. I hear it's going on track. I know Charlie Baker and the CCRPC, and I've talked to him about some of these issues as well. And so I'm hoping, I had lunch with him probably 2 months ago, but I hope that he will reach out if he does see a problem occur. They did raise something about Burlington, the Burlington Southern Champlain Parkway. So that's now split into 2 projects. So that's moving forward. But as for the Crescent Connector, I'm told everything's on track. And I've also been cautioned as a new senator, sometimes me asking questions can slow things down. So I'm waiting until somebody tells me I should chime in or probe. So if you think I should, please let me know. And I want to see the Crescent Connector happen. That's really exciting. Really hope public transportation is really thought about in the plans. But go ahead.
I appreciate that. And I can think of a bunch of different scenarios. I mean, since, you know, as you would probably remember, Tom, as well, when Interstate 189 used to travel over Shelburne Road, and they reconfigured that intersection, right, that interchange maybe 40 years ago, and that was supposed to be the Southern Connector. It was never completed. There's ultimately the Central Highway is supposed to go all the way over to North Avenue and connect through over Water Tower Hill and such. That obviously is not going through, at least not in my lifetime, but maybe sometime after, I'm sure. Going down to Southern Vermont, you go down to Route 7 down in Bennington. You can see where the ramps were built to improve that. I mean, just seems like there's a lot of projects that start with some legs and then they die off. I know there was a study done at the exit. Well, it wasn't an exit. It was proposed back 30 years ago for Bolton Valley, right there on 89, to have an interchange possibly put in down there. And I know we're looking at possibly putting an interchange in by the 116 overpass in South Burlington, right on 89, which would really alleviate a lot of problems throughout the whole Chittenden County area. I really would love to see those projects move forward.
I try not to talk this much, but I'll just say one other thing. This past session, my first session, I did actually introduce some language to the T-bill to address Act 250 when it comes to transportation projects, recounting what a paved or disrupted service would be. It did get to be considered by Senate Natural Resources since it extended beyond transportation. Senator Bray took it up. We took testimony. I testified on the matter. I'm making the case that Act 250 was really for private development, and when it comes to public infrastructure, public dollars for the public good, maybe we should be a little more considerate of getting those dollars to work faster and spending less money on regulation, which would address some of the projects you just highlighted. I don't know, there's other aspects of regulation in Vermont that slow down these projects, but I want to see the Champlain Connector come through, and I wish the Circumferential Highway wasn't dead. We need transportation to foster a strong economy in the great state. I'm talking too much, but I'd be happy to talk with you more about this later, Dan. Please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you.
Let me just say that as your Regional Planning Commission goes forward in conversation about what are the projects that meet highest priority, and I know there's the list every year. We also have a significant amount of money coming to us from the federal infrastructure bill. And frankly, I don't know. You may have seen this already. Charlie may have brought it to you at the Planning Commission. What funds are available for planning purposes and moving ahead on some of these projects? So I would be more optimistic than you are. I think at this point that things are not going to happen. I think they are going to happen, but I think having the resources to do those in a timely way, prioritized the way the county would like them, is going to be pretty important.
Thank you.
Trustees, any other questions?
I have lots of questions, Andrew, but I think we should let all of our representatives and senators have a pleasant evening, and thank them very much for coming here.
Well, where I was going to go next.
There's my email. If anybody wants to reach out, please reach out.
And make sure to address him as Tom. And similarly, Tom, I'm Andrew. Representatives, senators, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. If you have any other questions, comments, or things you want to make sure we hear, please feel free. Otherwise, really appreciate you all being here tonight. Appreciate your years of service to our community and beyond. So thank you all.
Thank you and take care. Good luck.
Thanks.
You as well. Thank you all. All right, and so now we will go to our next agenda item, 5B, the potential appointment of co-interim village managers. This one gets to be a little more exciting than the rest of the stuff that we do. I'm not sure who's controlling the TV in the meeting room or for those watching at home, but if you could pull up the memo, that'd be appreciated. So for the past few weeks, months or so, we've been talking as a board about what we're going to do after Evan's contract expires on February 25th, as we are going to continue to have the need for management within our community. And we now have an answer to that question. And the answer is that for the next few months, we are looking to appoint both Wendy Hisco and Brad Luck as co-interim village managers to serve in that capacity and help bring us to a point of hiring the next full-time permanent manager for our community. We've had a few conversations about this in executive session and the contract that is following the memo. But at this point in time, trustees, unless there are no other comments, questions, or concerns, I believe we are ready to make that appointment. That is, unless of course Brad or Wendy, unless there's any other second thoughts, but if there are, frankly, I don't want to hear it. George, I see your hand is up. Go ahead. And you're muted.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I keep trying to mute myself and to not interfere. I actually am thinking that I'd like to consider increasing the compensation. I think that we're asking them to take on a big responsibility. I believe the last time we did this, the interim co-managers received an extra $1,000. I would like to actually consider, but I don't want to hold things up, the wheels that are going to push this forward. But I'd like to consider making, instead of 200, to make it 250.
We can always consider anything, George. That's the entire purpose of this portion of, well, one of the purposes of this meeting. When I reached out to Susan McNamara Hill to help jog my memory, she had reminded me that we had provided 150 a week
I was wrong.
to her and Lauren. I'm not opposed to increasing it. Brad and Wendy had indicated that they were good with the 200.
Okay. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah. Other trustees, Dan, Amber?
I'm good with 200 if they're, they've already expressed that they're good.
Okay.
It's not to say that they're not worth it.
We can.
I'm good with the 200, but I think we've also said, Wendy, Brad, make sure you communicate with us if you feel like there is a ton on your plate and stuff. Just open communication with us.
Well, one of the questions I have along these lines, though, in terms of both the library and the rec department, are other people, are other staff in those, and maybe Wendy and Brad can speak to this just quickly, are other staff going to be taking on more responsibility. And so would we need to be looking to compensate them more? I'm just not sure how this is all going to work.
I think maybe one thing that would be beneficial, one of the things that I did not put in this memo, nor is it within the contract, Brad and or Wendy, would the two of you like to talk about how you would manage the village in this co-interim capacity?
Sure. Thanks. And just to answer your question, George, we are not anticipating at the start for any of our employees to take on any additional roles or duties.
Okay.
There may be, projects and days and times where they're going to help out, but I don't think we have any visions of them taking on anything officially. But I appreciate, Amber, what you were saying too, that if we find that we need to do that and reach out and say that, we need to assign certain things that we could do that. But otherwise, Wendy and I are looking forward to, we've been talking about continuing to serve the village and getting us through this interim period until you can advertise and hire for a full-time city manager. And we've kind of broken up the duties basically along the lines of our strengths and experiences. And so you'll see both of us, I think, at board meetings. I think primarily I'll be working on some of the board business and the city and charter related items. Wendy's has great rapport and relationship with our current department heads, so she'll be working with them and all of the village staff to make sure that things are sailing along as we kind of hold the reins until we get a full-time manager.
Okay.
Wendy, was there more that you wanted to add to that?
I can echo just what Brad said. I think yes, there will be probably more projects put on our staff, but we're not anticipating it being in a situation that we're not going to be available to our departments. So I think we're working as a team to get through this interim period is a great thing. So we can both be available as needed.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Wendy.
And I may not have been very clear. I do really appreciate the two of you and your willingness to do this. Beyond that, frankly, I can't think of other people who I would rather have doing this as within this role.
Exactly.
The two of you are fantastic leaders for our community. You are fantastic leaders within your departments. We hear time and time again as to reasons why people come to Essex Junction and stay in Essex Junction are because of recreation opportunities and or library opportunities. So I really can't thank the two of you enough and do truly look forward to having you both serve in this capacity.
I do think it's an exciting time for our community. So I think I'm sure it'll have its bumps, but I think it'll be it's a great way to be there for our community right now.
Okay.
So
good to hear.
Trustees, any other questions, comments, concerns?
Good.
Good.
Someone would like to make the motion?
I'll make a motion that the trustees approve of and sign the employment agreement of Wendy Hisco and Brad Luck to serve as co-interim village managers effective February 25th or 6th, 2022.
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Amber. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Didn't think so. Thank you all. It passed unanimously. Again, Wendy, Brad, thank you both so much. Look forward to having you serve in this capacity. With that said, Evan, I continue to thank you again for your leadership in helping us be to where we are today, helping to ensure that this community has been a fantastic community to live in, work in, pass through, what have you. Your leadership to get us to where we are has not been forgotten, and really appreciate all that you have done and will continue to do.
Thanks for the kind words.
So next, we go into business item 5C, a discussion and edit agreements and MOUs with the town of Essex in relation to independence. I know originally when we had this agenda item on here, I was unsure as to how far we were going to get through the agreements from our joint meeting. Thinking about all of the fantastic work and all of the agreements that we have approved of at this point in time, unless my memory is escaping me, I'm not sure we really have much to talk about in terms of editing these agreements. I would look to the trustees, staff, if any of you feel differently, or if there's something that I'm missing. Would love to hear it. Go ahead, Amber.
I was just going to second that. I think we spent a considerable amount of time on this last night, and I would love to move on to the next agenda item.
It was a late night and early morning.
Evan,
Just one quick update. I did get that list of stormwater projects, both from Chelsea and Dennis. So that'll be coming out. As I said, there was a list. I just didn't have it. So that was one comment from last night. Other things that I have mentioned before, please stay away from trying to charge each other rent for spaces in your buildings. You will just be shuffling money back and forth. And really, they are operations that need to be in those buildings for space reasons. As you all know, 2 Lincoln's not exactly the biggest building in the world. Neither is 81 Main. You guys can use each other's space pretty well. That's that. You've kept it out of your agreements. I say continue to do that. And congratulations on all the ground you covered last night.
Thank you, Evan. Go ahead, George.
Andrew, just a clarifying question. In terms of all the committees that we jointly share, you're not looking to actually sign contracts and binding agreements that sustain that continue these committees, correct? What are you looking for there? It wasn't really clear.
At this point, we were looking for which committees would we want to potentially share as separate municipalities.
Okay.
And that would then start the process of ironing out those agreements. Not necessarily that we are looking to have those committees be perpetual committees, but just whether or not to continue working together.
But okay, we're not. It just would be strange for us to sign a contract saying we commit to always having an economic development commission or a housing committee. A year from now, we may decide to go in a different direction. But I'm pretty sure I understood that, but I just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, just an update. So the language was sent to the attorneys to draft the finance contract and the 2 clerk treasurer's contracts and the rec Indian Brook senior contract. So those will be drafted for whenever the next joint meeting is for review. And so the only outstanding item that's currently in the MOU that doesn't have anything drafted will be the boards, commissions, and committees.
That's wonderful to hear. Thank you. So anything else on that agenda item?
nope, not for me.
Okay, so since there are no motions necessary, we can move right along this agenda we have and into discussing the budget schedule for January.
I can just introduce this quickly, which is just, was put forward by Sarah, 2 weeks ago or whatever it was, as we were trying to figure it out. And so we wanted to get it in here. One of the big things that's different here is that, or maybe it's not big, but one of the differences from last year is that there is only one public hearing, and that part of the reason we had 2 last year was because it was a different, because of COVID, the operation of your annual meeting was different. So that's why it was deemed to have 2 last year. So that's something here. There's only 1. And if you wanted to, we'd want to know that now so that we can make sure to get everyone in there and get it in on time. But we figured 1, since at this point, annual meeting looks like it will be back to how it usually is. And that's sort of all that's required in what was done before. We went back to sort of that system. So.
And that's a good question. In terms of annual meeting, I'm assuming we may want to have a hybrid option. And I don't necessarily mean that so I can continue to wear sweatpants.
Is that what you're wearing, Andrew?
Oh, of course. Come on. I'm just going to name it. But rather for those community members who want to be able to, be home, to provide that as an option.
I fully support that. I
Sure.
think we definitely have seen an uptick in attendance in the past 2 years, and annual meeting is not heavily attended to begin with. So I think adding the hybrid option would hopefully add some attendance to it.
And I think especially since we're no longer going to be voting on the floor for the budget.
Evan's got a question.
Oh, sorry, I missed that. Go ahead, Evan.
No, I didn't electronically raise my hand. If memory serves me, last year, because of COVID, the high school was not available to us because of space restrictions that they had at the time. So depending upon if you do want to have something in person, we'll have to reach out to the high school and see if it's available. That's all. We'll make that call tomorrow.
The other thing about that is there's actually a lot of legal reasons.
Yeah.
So the hybrid option is something that's still not quite clear about because of the checklist and voters, and because you do have floor voting except for the ballot. Except obviously the ballot is not by the floor, except for the budget. I don't know how clear that is yet to everyone. Probably to Susan, it's very clear, but to all of us, it's not quite clear. We are preparing to have Zoom, and we're trying to figure that out now. I would say just how to have that option because of that voter issue. If you are going to have floor voting, then through COVID and such as well, you were not allowed then to have sort of this electronic entity, but a lot has changed since then. So we're hoping that maybe there's some software or something that's allowed, where those folks wouldn't be able to vote, but could at least voice things. But yes, we will plan to at least, have our subscription to those items, and we're trying to work through if that's legal or how to do that legally to have that. The one thing that you could do is still have some sort of informational meeting. That's sort of some of the kind of fix that people have been looking at so far, just to that point of at least letting people hybrid sort of, remote in and hear from them if they can't make it to that actual meeting, because it does need to be physical for legal reasons. At least you get to hear from your constituents that way. So.
Thank you, Marguerite. Go ahead, George.
Two things. I think I looking at 3 workshops in a row for the budgets, and it would be, I think I'm going to guess that we're going to accomplish everything we need to accomplish on the budget in 1 workshop, maybe 2. 3 seems. So I think maybe staff can breathe a little sigh of relief and think that we won't need 3 budget workshops. I also think that the way this thing is going with the new variant, the new COVID variant, we should anticipate that a live meeting, a big live meeting is not going to happen. And if it does happen, it's a benefit and not, but I just can't, I think we have to sort of anticipate that it's going to have to be a completely online meeting.
To that end, we are looking at switching over to Zoom.
Yeah.
Several meetings that it seems to have a few less glitches than Teams, especially in the audio component. So we're working with Town TV on that issue, as well as with Town IT. So for luckily we have a couple of extra months to also work out some kinks, but we're looking to be on Zoom.
That sounds great. The only thing I would say to that is you then lose out on the ability to have this like together mode and some of the other fun ways that you can rearrange the spaces.
Oh, you'll still have the movie theater setting just like the high school, but you don't get to pick which seat you're in.
All right.
And you don't get the guy next to you that constantly asks questions.
That can work well.
But no, yeah. But one of the things I believe Tammy is also working with is Zoom offers a few extra features that we're very interested in, as well as Town TV was kind enough to help us with the coordination. So by April, we should have that pretty much worked in.
Sounds good.
Right,
Good to hear.
right, Jordan? Got it. Thanks.
Got it.
Great. So yeah, I have no concerns with the budget schedule as it's being presented. As George mentioned, it'd be nice if we were able to not necessarily have that many workshops, though those are during our regularly scheduled meetings. But we'll see how much we can accomplish.
Feel free to cancel.
Yep.
Well, so if there's nothing else, that would bring us into the consent agenda.
We had the addition of,
I knew that. I was testing you all. 5E,
Sure
and
you were.
this proclamation request.
I got it right here. I'll get the letter.
And as this is coming up, curiously, did this only come to the village board? Is this something that went to all municipalities?
no, it actually went to Greg only, and I don't know much more than that. So I just,
So let me touch.
oh, yeah.
This came at as we were saying, the last moment. I didn't know if any of you were familiar with this person and the work that she has done. As you could see in the letter, she has a long career. But I just didn't know if anybody or any full connection to the village. So I didn't want to miss the opportunity and then somebody say, hey, why didn't we do that? So if the board is not of a mind to do it, then I suggest, or not ready to do it, don't.
I think I don't know the individual here at all. I know of the service of 211,
Right.
and it is a great service for our community as a whole. I'm not sure though as to how appropriate this is, with the exception of, I believe that this has been located above the post office square. Yeah, I believe that's where the physical offices are, and we appreciate them being in the village. But frankly, this seems like it would be more appropriate for a legislative approval, as 211 goes well beyond the village.
Mm-hmm.
How about something the village offers an honorable mention to a great career,
Sure.
and we send her a letter of congratulations on her retirement.
Sure. Congratulations and appreciation for her work.
Absolutely. For
Yes.
community service.
See a
Absolutely.
lot of heads nodding. That's good enough for
That
me.
sounds good.
All right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Thank you. So now I think we're on to the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Remember, thank you, George, for the second. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great, passed unanimously. Thank you. We go on to the reading file and board member comments. We haven't met much lately, so is there anything anybody else wanted to add? Go ahead, Amber.
Don't want to discuss this tonight because I want to get out before 8 o'clock.
Do it. Here it is.
But at a later meeting, can we please have just something even on the consent agenda, just a memo or whatnot about the noise ordinance? And those pesky trash haulers.
Sure. In terms of whether.
What effective date? I think we talked about this maybe even a couple months ago at this point, about the effective date and communication to trash haulers about that effective date.
So what is
at this point that it would have been effective, yet I continue to hear the distinct noises. So
just to be clear, you want to know what was the effective date and what was the communication to the haulers?
correct.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Amber. Anything else from any other board members or staff?
Not for me.
All right.
Happy
There's not.
holidays.
We're getting there. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Amber. All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Well,
Aye.
first we have to say good, happy holidays to everybody. We're not going
Well-
to see everyone until after the holidays. Is that correct?
We have a meeting next week.
Oh, we meeting next week? Okay, that's right. I thought that canceled. Okay, never mind. Sorry. All right.
There's one important.
Holidays, George.
But thank you.
Hanukkah.
On happy holidays.
I've got some healthcare issues.
All right.
Thank
No,
you.
no, happy holidays, everybody. But yes, we have one important agenda item for the 22nd.
All right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. So we have the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Great. Have a good night, everybody. Happy holidays.
Good night.